HOA Karen threw my grandpa's cane away, got fined and community ban. The park was quiet that morning, except for the sharp clatter of a wooden cane hitting the pavement, followed by a smug, "That's what you get for ignoring the rules." My heart stopped as I saw my grandfather, hunched and trembling, staring at the broken pieces of his only support, scattered like kindling in the grass. Karen, the HOA's self-appointed enforcer, stood over him, her smirk as cold as the autumn air. Grandpa Joe, 78 and stubborn as a mule, had been my rock since I was a kid. After Mom passed, he'd moved into our neighborhood to be closer, his old house in the country too far for his weakening legs. His cane hand carved by my late grandmother wasn't just a tool, it was a piece of her, a reminder of their 50 years together. Every morning, he'd shuffle to the park, cane tapping rhythmically, to sit on his favorite bench and watch the world go by. It was his routine, his peace. But Karen, with her clipboard and her endless list of HOA violations, had other plans. It started small. Karen had been patrolling our gated community for months, her eyes like a hawk's, spotting infractions no one else cared about. A mailbox slightly askew, a lawn half an inch too long, a dog barking 1 decibel too loud, she'd slap you with a fine before you could blink. Most of us grumbled, but complied, too tired to fight her petty tyranny. Grandpa, though, was different. He didn't care for her rules. "I've lived through wars and recessions," he'd say, chuckling. "I'm not scared of a woman with a power trip." The trouble began when Karen decided Grandpa's cane was a safety hazard. She claimed it scratched the park's benches, leaving unsightly marks that violated the HOA's aesthetic standards. She'd sent him letters, left voicemails, even confronted him once while he was feeding the ducks. "You need to replace that thing with a modern one," she'd said, pointing at the cane like it was trash. Grandpa just smiled, tipped his hat, and kept walking. I thought it was harmless until that morning. I was at the park with Grandpa, helping him settle onto his bench, when Karen stormed over, her face redder than the leaves falling around us. "Joe, I warned you," she snapped, snatching the cane from his hand before he could react. I lunged forward, but she was too quick. With a dramatic flourish, she hurled it onto the pavement, where it cracked and splintered. Grandpa gasped, his hands shaking as he gripped the bench to keep from falling. "You can't do that," I shouted, my voice cracking with fury. Karen just shrugged. "It's for the good of the community," she said, turning on her heel. The park wasn't just quiet anymore, it was suffocating. Neighbors started gathering, drawn by the commotion. Mrs. Larson, who'd lived here longer than anyone, shook her head in disbelief. Tim, the landscaper, clenched his fists, muttering under his breath. Even the kids playing nearby stopped, sensing something was wrong. I knelt beside Grandpa, trying to calm him, but his eyes were fixed on the broken cane, tears welling up. "That was Helen's," he whispered, his voice barely audible. My chest tightened. I wanted to scream, to grab Karen and shake her, but I knew that wouldn't fix this. Over the next few days, Karen's actions rippled through the neighborhood like a stone in a pond. Word spread fast Karen had crossed a line. People who'd once ignored her antics started talking. At the community center, I overheard Mrs. Larson telling a group of neighbors, "She's gone too far this time." That cane wasn't just wood, it was Joe's heart. Tim, usually quiet, posted a photo of the broken cane on the neighborhood's private forum, captioned, "This is what our HOA stands for now." Comments flooded in, each one angrier than the last. I tried to stay calm for Grandpa's sake, but inside, I was boiling. Karen had to pay for this. Then came the twist none of us expected. At the next HOA meeting, a new face showed up, Clara, a retired lawyer who'd just moved into the neighborhood. She'd been quiet so far, blending into the background. But that night, she stood up, her voice steady and sharp. "I've been reviewing the HOA bylaws," she said, holding up a thick binder. "Karen's actions aren't just cruel, they're illegal." The room went silent. Clara explained that Karen had no authority to destroy personal property, and her pattern of harassment documented by neighbors' complaints violated state laws on elder abuse. "I've already filed a formal complaint with the city," she added, her eyes locking onto Karen, who sat frozen in her chair. Karen tried to defend herself, stammering about community standards and necessary enforcement, but the room wasn't having it. "Mrs. Larson stood up, her voice trembling with anger. "You threw an old man's cane away." "Karen, what kind of standard is that?" Tim followed, recounting how Karen had once fined him for planting unauthorized flowers, and others chimed in with their own stories of her overreach. The meeting turned into a reckoning, with Karen shrinking under the weight of the community's outrage. The real explosion came a week later at the city council hearing. Clara had rallied the neighbors, and dozens showed up to testify against Karen. Grandpa, too frail to attend, asked me to speak for him. I stood at the podium, my hands shaking as I described the cane, how Grandma had carved it with her own hands, how it was Grandpa's lifeline, how Karen's cruelty had left him housebound, too ashamed to walk without it. I held up a photo of the splintered wood, and the room gasped. Karen, sitting in the front row, looked smaller than ever, her usual swagger gone. The council didn't just listen, they acted. They fined Karen $5,000 for destruction of property and banned her from holding any HOA position for life. The room erupted in applause, but it wasn't over. Clara revealed she'd been working with a local journalist, and the story hit the city newspaper the next day. HOA tyrant destroys elderly man's cane, faces consequences. The article included interviews with neighbors, photos of the broken cane, and even a quote from Grandpa, "I just want to sit in my park again." Social media exploded, with hashish justice for Joe trending locally. Karen's name became synonymous with petty cruelty, but the sweetest justice wasn't the fine or the ban, it was the community's response. Neighbors rallied around Grandpa, raising money to commission a new cane, this one engraved with Helen's initials and a small dove, her favorite symbol. Tim built a new bench in the park, dedicated to Grandpa, with a plaque that read, "Joe's place where kindness wins." Karen, meanwhile, became a pariah. She stopped showing up at community events, her clipboard abandoned, her authority shattered. I heard she was planning to move, unable to face the neighbors she'd once terrorized. Grandpa's first day back at the park was a quiet triumph. I walked beside him, his new cane tapping steadily. As neighbors waved and smiled, he sat on his new bench, the dove engraving glinting in the sun, and let out a long sigh. "Feels like Helen's here," he said, patting the cane. I nodded, my throat tight. The park was his again, and Karen's reign was over. What do you think? Did Karen get what she deserved? Or should the community have gone easier on her? Share your thoughts below.